Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a name that I'm sure you all know,
Right.
Kendrick Lamar. And we're going to try to figure out why he's considered such a force in music A&D culture,
Okay.
and not just in the hip-hop world. Our guide for this is going to be a really interesting podcast discussion
Yeah.
all about Kendrick Lamar.
Cool.
And we're not just going to run through his bio or anything. We're
Right.
going to really try to get to the bottom of what makes his artistry so special, the weight of the themes that he tackles, and why people have such strong opinions about him.
Yeah. I mean, you don't hear a lot of, he's all right
Yeah, you really don't.
when it comes to Kendrick.
So one of the things that this podcast really brings up right away
Okay.
is how Kendrick Lamar is so much more than just a rapper.
Right.
They really try to make the case that
His influence goes way beyond music.
Yeah.
And that he's truly a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah. And I think that's
And that he's shifted,
Yeah.
the landscape of hip hop. Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. So it's bigger than lines. Beats and rhymes here.
Definitely.
I'm intrigued. Where do they go from there?
So they spent a lot of time talking about To Pimp a Butterfly,
Okay.
which they call a narrative masterpiece.
Wow.
And they highlight specifically the track You,
Okay.
which is really just this raw expression of survivor's guilt,
Right.
almost painful to listen to.
Yeah.
And they use this as an example of how the
But
album...
it's way beyond just surface level commentary
Exactly.
on these big issues like systemic racism,
Oh, right.
personal trauma.
It's deep,
Yeah.
you know?
What always struck me about that album is it's HAVY stuff,
Absolutely, yeah.
but it resonated
Yeah,
with so many people.
right.
It wasn't just like a niche audience.
It wasn't just for the hip-hop heads.
Right.
Right,
Why
yeah.
do they think that is?
So they argue that it's Kendrick's ability to connect with listeners on a deeply personal level, while at the same time tackling these massive societal issues.
And they even point out how the song All Right became an anthem for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, wow.
With its message of resilience.
To have a song become an anthem, that's incredible.
It's huge, yeah.
But I've also heard the criticism that his lyrics can be too abstract,
Okay.
maybe even alienating for some listeners.
Yeah.
Did the podcast address that at all?
They did, yeah. They actually bring up this whole debate about accessibility versus complexity in art.
Okay.
Does everything have to be easily digestible? Or is there value in work that challenges us to think and uncover these deeper meanings?
Right.
And they make the argument that Kendrick's complexity is actually a strength
Interesting.
because it encourages repeated listens. You're digging for those layers of meaning.
So it's like each listen reveals something new.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that. But they also talk about Humble,
Uh-huh.
which feels way more straightforward.
Right.
Does that contradict their point about the complexity?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They actually use humbly to show Kendrick's versatility.
Interesting.
That he can create music that's both catchy
Okay.
and thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And they even break down the line, my left stroke just went viral, which seems so simple on the surface.
Right.
But they argue it has these multiple interpretations
Okay.
connecting to social media trends,
Yeah.
but also societal impact.
Hold on. I never thought about it like that. It seems so simple on the surface. So even his accessible tracks have these hidden depths.
Yeah, they're arguing that pretty much all of his music does.
I'm starting to see why this podcast is calling him a genius.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. So this multi-layered approach, it's not just in the studio though, right?
Right.
The podcast also talks about
It's like,
his live performances.
they do, yeah.
Oh, I've heard there's something else. What do they have to say?
They talk about how his shows are more than just concerts.
Okay.
They're these immersive experiences that go beyond just playing the songs.
Okay.
They describe it as a form of storytelling, often reflecting on his own personal journey in a way that connects with the audience in a whole other level.
So it's not just about the music, it's the whole package,
Yeah.
the energy, the visuals, the way he uses the stage.
Exactly.
I bet that adds a whole other dimension to his artistry.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It really does. And it connects back to that idea of him as this cultural force.
Right.
He's not just making music, he's actively shaping how his audience experiences it.
Yeah. it's not just passive consumption. He's creating a whole world
Look
for
at
his
that.
fans to step into. Did the podcast mention any other artists
They did.
in relation to Kendrick?
Yeah, they brought up some interesting connections to hip-hop legends
Okay.
like Tupac and Lil Wayne.
Oh, wow.
They mentioned a story about a young Kendrick being recorded, rapping along to Lil Wayne's music,
Yeah.
showing his admiration for those artists who kind of paved the way.
That's so cool. It's like he was studying the greats, absorbing their styles.
Yeah.
Did they say anything about how those influences show up in his
Right.
own work?
They highlight how Kendrick is very aware of the history and evolution of hip-hop.
Right.
He recognizes the shoulders he stands on, so to speak. But he's also forging his own unique path.
Yeah.
And they even mentioned a recent concert moment where he paid homage to Tupac's legacy
Oh, wow.
in a really moving way.
I wish they'd gone into more detail about that. It sounds powerful.
Yeah.
It really does feel like he's bridging that gap
Yeah.
between those older generations of hip hop and what's happening today.
I think that's a great point, yeah. He's got one foot in the past, one foot in the future.
So the podcast hosts, they're really making a case here for Kendrick Lamar's overall significance.
Yeah.
They're highlighting his artistic depth.
Right.
The complexity of his lyrics, his ability to connect with audiences on all these different levels. It's
Yes,
making
sir.
me think, is there anyone else out there doing what Kendrick does? I mean, someone who can top the charts and be a voice for social change at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Did the podcast
That's
offer any
what-
comparison?
That's actually the big question that they leave us with.
Okay.
Is Kendrick Lamar a unique phenomenon? Or is he part of a larger wave of artists who are blurring the lines
Yeah,
between entertainment and activism?
that's a question worth pondering.
It is.
What do you think? Is there another artist out there?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, there are definitely artists who are socially conscious
Yeah,
and commercially successful.
right.
But Kendrick seems to occupy a space all his own.
Yeah.
That blend of mainstream appeal and powerful social commentary, the way he weaves those intricate narratives. It's remarkable. This podcast has me convinced that he's in a league of his own.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. We went beyond the surface here and discovered a whole world of meaning and artistry.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all this with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kendrick's work is a goldmine for reflection and discussion.
It really is. And for anyone listening who wants to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the podcast that sparked this whole conversation. It's called Prime Time.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And they have a fantastic episode called Who is Kendrick Lamar? Everything you need to know about him.
Catchy title.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. For anyone who wants to delve deeper into his life, his music, and his cultural impact, it's a rabbit hole worth going down.
I agree.
And remember, this is just the start of the conversation. Keep exploring, keep listening, and keep thinking critically about the artists who shape our world.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious.
Yeah.
It's like he's in control of the whole experience.
This
Not
is
just
a whole world.
Yeah.
So did they talk about other artists at all?
They did.
In relation
They
to
bring up some
Kendrick.
really interesting connections
The-
to hip-hop legends
Yeah.
like Tupac and Lil Wayne.
Wow, okay.
And they mentioned this story about a young Kendrick
Mm-hmm.
being recorded, rapping along to Lil Wayne's music,
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
which I think kind of shows his admiration for these artists.
Right, like he was studying the greats.
Who kind of paved the way.
Yeah, absorbing their styles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did they say anything about how those influences
They do.
manifest?
In his
Absolutely.
work, they highlight how Kendrick is very aware
Yeah.
of the history and the evolution of hip-hop.
Okay.
He recognizes, the shoulders he stands on, so to speak.
Right.
But he's also forging his own unique path. And they even mentioned a recent concert moment where he paid homage to Tupac's legacy.
Oh, wow. I wish they would have gone into more detail about that. It sounds powerful.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like he's bridging the gap between, those older generations of hip hop and what's happening today.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
He's got one foot in the past, one foot in the future.
So these podcast hosts, they're really making a case here.
They are. Big time.
For Kendrick Lamar's overall significance,
Yeah.
they're highlighting his artistic depth, the complexity of his lyrics, his ability to connect with audiences on all these different levels. You know, it's making me think, is there anyone else out there doing what Kendrick does? Someone who can, like, top the charts and be a voice for social change?
Right.
It's a tough question. At the same time, did the podcast offer any comparisons?
That's actually the big question they leave us with.
Okay. Interesting.
Is Kendrick Lamar a unique phenomenon? Or is he part of a larger wave of artists who are blurring those lines between entertainment and activism?
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah, it is.
What do you think? Is there another artist out there?
That's tough. Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, there are definitely artists out there who are socially conscious,
Right.
commercially successful. But Kendrick seems to occupy a space all his own.
Yeah.
You know, that blend of mainstream appeal and powerful social commentary. The way he weaves those intricate narratives is really remarkable. I think this podcast has me convinced that he's in a league of his own.
I'm inclined to agree. I think this whole deep dive has been eye-opening. We went beyond the surface here and discovered a whole world of meaning and artistry.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all this with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Kendrick's work is a gold mine for reflection and discussion.
It really is. And for anyone listening who wants to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the podcast that sparked this whole conversation. It's called Prime Time.
Okay, check it out.
And they have a fantastic episode called Who is Kendrick Lamar? Everything you need to know about him.
Catchy title. I like it.
It's a great starting point for anyone who wants to delve deeper into his life, his music, and his cultural impact.
Makes sense.
You know, it's a rabbit hole worth going down.
Totally agree.
And remember, this is just the start of the conversation. You know, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep thinking critically about the artists who shape our world.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious.
Well, that just about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Kendrick Lamar. I don't know about you, but I feel like I just took a college course on hip-hop history, artistry, cultural impact, all rolled into one.
It's pretty amazing what you can learn when you really take the time to unpack it all. You know, Kendrick Lamar's music is definitely more than just entertainment.
I feel like I'm going to be listening to his albums with a whole new set of ears now.
I think so too.
You know, I'm hearing those layers, those double meanings, those connections to history and culture. It's a whole different experience.
That's the beauty of art, isn't it?
Yeah.
It keeps revealing new things to us each time we engage with it.
Yeah. And with an artist like Kendrick, whose work is so rich and layered, that journey of discovery is especially rewarding.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I think we should give huge shout out to the Primetime Podcast and their episode on Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, they really got this whole conversation started for us.
They really sparked this whole deep dive and provided a ton of insights.
Absolutely.
So if you want to keep the conversation going, definitely check them out.
Great place to start.
So as we sign off, here's a little something to ponder. Do you think Kendrick Lamar's approach to music, balancing mainstream appeal with this powerful social commentary, is this a sign of things to come?
That's a good question.
You know, will we see more artists follow in his footsteps?
I mean, is he one of a kind? Or is he the leading edge of a new wave of artists who are really redefining what it means to be both popular and impactful?
Right.
Only time will tell. But I, for one, am excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Kendrick Lamar. Until next time, keep those ears open, those minds curious, and never stop exploring.